Welcome in, everyone, to another episode of the Real Estate Tax Playbook, where we discuss all things real estate, providing timely and precise information to real estate professionals looking to build their own customized real estate planning playbook. I'm your host, Evan Ross, tax director with Brown Ambruzs and Company, based out of our Roanoke office location. Most of you have had a chance to check out our website by now, but if you haven't, please go check out the Brown Ambruzs website. A link to that website can be found in the description of this podcast. On the website, you'll find more information on our service lines, as well as our professionals and our office locations throughout Virginia, West Virginia, and Tennessee. With that, we got an exciting one today. I'd like to introduce our guest, Steve Ambruzs with BNB SideKick. Steve, thanks for being here today.
Thanks so much, Evan. I appreciate the invite. It's good to see you.
Good to see you. I appreciate it. Kind of this came to fruition pretty quickly, so it's always nice when that happens and you can connect with someone and it all makes sense. Love for you. Get a quick little just summary background of what you do on a day-to-day basis. A little bit about BNB SideKick.
Sure. Yeah. So the long and short of it is we are a co-hosting management company here in the greater Roanoke region. And so what that means is that we take clients that have short-term rentals, actually any furnished rentals, and we manage it for them. And so we operate as a co-host. And what that kind of the definition of co-host is, it's somewhere in between the primary host and a full-fledged property manager. So we differ from full-fledged property management in that we don't handle leasing, we don't handle tenant screening, we don't handle advertising. The co-hosting side of the property management that we do specifically uses online travel agency platforms. So your Airbnbs, your VRBOs, your furnished finders, your booking.coms. And so we take owners that have furnished housing, whether it's an apartment, a condo, or a house, a multifamily apartment building. As long as it's a furnished rental, we then operate that on their behalf and we manage it for them. And so we're able to do things like get their properties live if they haven't had them onto the market yet. We can also take over their business if they're sort of tired of it already. So we can do lots of different things in the co-hosting realm, and we really like to work with different owners to kind of meet their needs and kind of take over where they need help. And that's sort of the name of the business, right? We're their sidekick to sort of their operations already to kind of help them succeed in the short-term rental industry.
Great. Thanks for that kind of little bit of an overview before we get into the conversation today. Yeah, I feel like the co-hosting aspect really the last 5, 10, 15 years has really come on by storm and become a really popular option for a lot of property owners.
Yeah, it's grown a lot since COVID. I think Airbnb was sort of I don't want to say it wasn't popular before COVID, but it was just sort of a niche product. A lot of people still relied on hotels and traditional rentals. And then during COVID, people really saw the need for furnished housing because so many people didn't want to go out, access to the public and like different things were shutting down. And so the need to be in a furnished rental that was away from big cities, we just saw a huge demand for furnished rentals during COVID. And so after that, it really has blown up in places that aren't really what you would consider tourist destinations like Roanoke, right? And so it's not purely a tourism-based business anymore.
That's great. That's great. And it's good that you mentioned nobody wants to talk about COVID, but that is true. A lot of people, they didn't want to be in a hotel with those common areas and stuff. You could still go on your vacation, go on your trip, spend time with your family, and it'd just be you. And the co-hosting and a lot of these property management platforms allowed you to do that. So that's awesome. Every episode, we have a Tell Me More segment. So when we first met, the conversation of bikes, bike shops, stuff like that came up. So tell me more about your prior career, I guess, before BNB SideKick, what that looked like.
Yeah, so we moved to Roanoke with the intentions of kind of relocating from Alaska. So my partner and I were in Alaska. She was a state prosecutor, and both of us were tired of the dark and the cold winters, and we wanted to be somewhere a little closer to both of our families. Both of our families kind of resided on the East Coast, and so we long story short, we picked Roanoke to settle in primarily because I wanted to live in an outdoor focused community that had affordable housing and where I could launch this bike shop. I had this crazy idea to do a bike shop, coffee shop, beer shop kind of hybrid. And it was this experiential retail thing. And so, Roanoke ended up being where we ended up. And that was in 2017. And it was a great business. I enjoyed launching that company, and it was successful, and we sold a ton of bikes and we introduced new people to riding, and it was kind of focused on family cycling and commuter cycling and using bikes for transportation, not your like spandex kind of for sport. And that was the sort of the gist of it. And we had a full cafe bar, in the shop, and it was great. And then during that sort of business, when we were launching that, we master leased the property, and above the shop there were two apartments. They were single bedroom apartments. And we had done Airbnb in the past when we were living in Alaska. And we thought, hey, well, if we're able to kind of rent this space to people that are coming to Roanoke to do some cycling, then maybe they can stay above the shop. And maybe that would be cool. We could kind of advertise that as like, hey, come stay with us. And, you can come downstairs and have coffee and food. So we launched those two short-term rentals, and they started in 2017. They were crazy successful right out of the gate. I mean, they helped float the business in the wintertime because we had revenue from those rentals that we didn't see in the bike shop, because cycling is kind of a seasonal business. And we sort of saw that potential, and it sort of grew from there. And so we were able to take on more units in downtown Roanoke because of how well those did. And yeah, so my former career was a bike shop owner. And like we just had mentioned, everything changed during COVID. And so I ended up closing the shop. We ended up kind of pivoting the business and leaned in full time to short-term rentals and furnished rentals. And fortunately, we were able to make a number of connections through the bike shop while we were open with owners that had property. And when we told them about this sort of transition with the business, they said, yeah, come on, help us. Like we would love to do more. Right. And so it kind of naturally morphed into this co-hosting company in about 2021, 2022, somewhere in there.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great story. I mean, I love having people like this on the podcast that have that well-rounded experience. I mean, you've been all over the country, Alaska, about as far as you can go in the United States, and
Yep.
then coming back to Roanoke, starting the bike shop, and then now where you are today with the co-hosting. We did want to say I took your referral that you gave me when we last met, went over to Roanoke Mountain Adventures, met Jeff Todd over there. He was
Yeah, perfect.
great.
Yep. Good.
Yeah. For those listeners that don't know, my oldest daughter, she was in need of a new bike. About 2 weeks ago, the weather was nice. She got on her bike, was riding down the street. I said, girl, you are way too big for that bike now. We need to go check something out. So anyways, went over to Roanoke Mountain Adventures, which is in Wasena. If you haven't been over there, definitely go check it out. So shout out to Jeff and his team over there. But went in, she rode probably 5-6 bikes trying to figure out what was best for her. Found one she liked. We took it on a ride down the Greenway. She came back. She just knew that was the one for her. So ended up getting that one. So she was excited, little girl. We didn't want to get off of it when we got home. So
That's great.
we
Oh, that's
didn't
awesome.
we didn't go with the highest in the womb. We
Yep.
went with Marin.
Yeah,
With
perfect.
24-inch. So still a good lightweight kids bike.
Yep.
The gear shift was pretty cool on that one, that you had to push it forward, but there was a button, I guess, that you could easily downshift for
Nice.
hills. So
Yeah.
it was cool. It was a good experience. I really appreciate you giving me that introduction.
That's great. Yeah. And the reason for that is Roanoke Mountain Adventures is sort of who we kind of sold the business assets to RMA, and kind of I helped transition their team to more mechanical work. And so it's great to recommend them. I mean, Jeff's a great guy, and their whole operation is wonderful, and it's a real asset to Roanoke, because if your listeners aren't familiar, a big part of their business is used in consignment outdoor gear. And so, things are expensive for everybody right now, and the ability to go in there and find a used bike or find used outdoor gear it's a true asset, right?
Yeah. No, yeah, it was a great experience. Looked like they were busting at the seams though. When I went, that was my first time in there. I was like, y'all got to find a new space. So we'll see what happens there. But anyways, yeah, it was a great experience. So anyways, I'm sure listeners would love to hear more about Alaska and the bike shops and the bike everything. But let's get into a little bit of the meat of the conversation for today. You kind of give a little bit of a summary on some of these things we're going to talk about. But as far as who you work with, you said it's really not limited. Do you see more that it's more individuals, business owners, multi-unit type properties? What are you seeing the most of, or is it an even spread?
The most, so we truly do have the entire spectrum of people that are individual owners to, we have developers that own several multifamily properties in the Roanoke region. I would say the majority of our clients are individual owners. And so they have, the story we hear from a lot of people is, I bought this house, I put it on Airbnb, and I'm tired of dealing with it. Can you help? Right. And so that's the majority of our clients. And it's typically people who saw the potential, right? They either redid a home and they said, hey, this would make a good Airbnb, or somebody gave them a tip and said, hey, Airbnb is doing really well. You should consider that for this home. And they've done it for a couple of years and they're just over it because I mean, honestly, it's a nonstop grind 24/7 if you're trying to do this as a business because it never ends. It's always new guests. It's always new bookings. It's on repeat, right? And so there's no break. And so if you are doing that as an individual, it gets tiring and it's hard to pull yourself away from that, particularly if you want to maximize your income and do this as a full-fledged operating business.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And so are you, Roanoke? We kind of talked about your kind of gravitation to this area. What made you kind of want to grow this business in Roanoke? You see so many Airbnbs and more travel destinations, beaches, mountain lodge areas, things like that. What made you kind of just go all the way in with the Roanoke marketplace?
Yeah, so it was actually really interesting because there's a statistic that we use in the business called RevPAR, and it's revenue per available room. It's taken from the hotel industry, and it's kind of an equalizer when you look at financial data. And RevPAR, for the people who are math nerds, what you do is you take the average nightly rate of your listings and then you multiply it by your occupancy rate, right? And that gives you a number. And why that's cool is it's sort of standardized between properties, right? So like a really sort of quick and dirty way to understand RevPAR is, let's say you've got a bigger property and it rents for $500 a night, right? And you have and you want to compare that to a smaller property that rents at $100 a night. Well, if you think about it, if that bigger property only rents for 50% of the time, but your smaller property rents 100% of the time, that RevPAR will allow you to equally look at both of those properties and evaluate which one does better financially. And so as I was sort of evaluating our data from the initial 4 Airbnbs that we had in Roanoke, and I went to sort of these software conferences that, you know, were run by the software companies that we use. We used Guesty at the time, and we actually are back to using Guesty. But, you know, people there talked about financial data and talked about performance and talked about how other industries, you know, other sort of regions are doing. And I looked at our RevPAR numbers and I was like, holy smokes, like Roanoke is doing really, really well when you compare it to the RevPAR from tourist destinations, right? And so it was like, this makes a lot of sense because there's not a lot of people doing Airbnb in Roanoke at the level that we were, which was like, you know, we're using pricing software, we're using, you know, advanced automatic messages. We're really killing it here with operating these rentals on a high level. And it's blowing everybody else out of the water and we're getting tons of bookings. We're seeing 80% occupancy. And it's like, sure, I could go and try and invest in a Florida destination where we might make more money, but the headaches of trying to manage something from far away, I could do it in my backyard and I could earn a lot and I could earn a high percentage of what I would make in another destination. And so Roanoke was really attractive in that sense because it allowed us to invest our time and energy here and really produce great results for us and our clients in a sort of a sleeper area that not a lot of people gave any attention to.
Yeah, that's great that you shared that because I mean, Roanoke does have a lot of value. People may not think of it as a large metropolitan city, but I mean, there's a lot of opportunity here, a lot of activities people are coming here for. So that's great that you found that space in this marketplace, and it's adding a lot of value. You all have obviously created a lot of efficiencies, which kind of goes back to when you said people are just tired of doing this; they don't want to manage it themselves. From a software perspective, what does that look like? You mentioned Guesty. What all are you all using on a daily basis to make sure this runs smoothly?
Yeah, so the core products that we use are a property management software called Guesty. That's the biggest one. And Guesty's been a player in the industry for a long time. And what makes them stand out is they have a lot of people in their R&D teams that they like to say, their kind of thing is to build software to save time for people because they have several people in our similar situation where they're managing dozens, if not hundreds of properties, right? And the ability to make small changes to speed up things or to smooth systems out is a huge benefit. But Guesty is basically our channel manager, right? So it takes Airbnb and VRBO and Booking.com, takes all those things and condenses it into one unified software where we can manage property from a reservation standpoint. So think of messaging guests, booking reservations, applying refunds, calculating financial data. Like Guesty will do all that for you, which is really helpful. The other core piece of software that we use is called Price Labs, and Price Labs is a dynamic pricing tool. And that is something that a lot of people either don't understand really well or that just don't put a lot of time into. And that really is where we shine as a co-hosting company because Price Labs does amazing things for people. I mean, we look at, and just to give your audience some hard data here, I just pulled it up before the episode. We have an owner that had a property downtown that did about 97,000 gross in revenue in 2023. And then they brought us in as a client in 2024. And the first full year of operations under our management co-hosting, they did close to 121,000 in revenues. We're talking like 50% more revenue year over year, but just because of the tools that we implemented. And that's sort of the like where Price Labs and Guesty shine, right? Because it allows you to get your listings on several different channels. It allows you to really maximize demand with dynamic pricing, and allows you to sort of streamline that whole process from when someone books all the way to when they check out, to just make it smooth and easy and painless for the guest. That leaves you a good review, and that just keeps that ball rolling, right? And just keeps that momentum going for your listings.
That's a great example. And Price Labs, is it also factoring in things like events and dates and schedule things like that? Is it considering things like that as far as the pricing model?
It does, yeah. So
Okay.
what it does is it has sort of it uses historical data. So my sort of limited understanding of how their software works is it uses historical data to see when listings start to book like far in the future, and then they
Okay.
know that there's an event there. A great example is Virginia Tech graduation, right? We see literally a X increase in pricing for Virginia Tech graduation, and that's every year, right? And so our listings that normally book at $100 a night will literally book between $300 to $500 a night for Virginia Tech graduation. And if you're not using Price Labs to capture that, you're shooting yourself in the foot,
Yeah.
because it's just wasted revenue.
And I believe it to that example. I'm a Virginia Tech alumni, and I believe you are too, grad school, or
Yep,
did you?
that's right.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
97. Yep.
So,
No, sorry, no, 2001. What am I saying?
okay.
Graduated.
Yeah, very good. But yeah, I mean, I know all too well. I mean, there's a finite number of hotels in the Blacksburg, Christiansburg area. So, I mean, a lot of people will stay in Roanoke, but even then, people are limited and they're looking for places to stay. So that's awesome. So I've experienced that recently. We're going to a Savannah Bananas game. I don't know if you're familiar with
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Banana Ball League,
I
but
haven't been, but I know I've seen pictures and stuff on social media. Yeah.
yeah, we won a lottery to go to. I mean, you still had to pay for the tickets, but we won the lottery to be able to purchase tickets for an event. And we were looking at the location, and it was just incredible. You look for like next week, the price is $100 a night for everywhere. You
Yep.
look for that week when the game's going on, $400 or $500 a night.
Yep.
So, but it means they're using something similar to Price Labs or some other software
Yep.
that's
Yep.
helping them. So,
Another piece of software too that I'd like to touch on, which I think
yeah,
your readers
definitely.
will find, or your listeners will find interesting, is we've sort of dived headfirst into advanced AI agents, right? And so we have AI agents that answer 99.9% of our guest communication. And it is incredible. And it has done so much for us from a operation standpoint, where we can lean on that. For like a great example is like middle of the night lockouts, right? So we have several of our units are downtown. People like to do fun stuff downtown. They may, have a few too many drinks, whatever. They get back to their room at midnight or later. They type in the wrong door code. The door locks them out because, they fat fingered the keypad
Yeah,
or whatever.
too many
So
times.
they're
Yeah.
messaging us at 12:30 at night or 1 o'clock in the morning. We're all asleep, right? The AI is smart enough to ask them, like, make sure you're at the right unit, make sure you're typing in the right code. Here's a backup code, right? Here's, where the keys are if the lock is dead or whatever. Here's a video link to where you can find the backup keys, all completely automated. And like, it's incredible, the advancements that just in the short time that we've had AI, the ability to have that be a virtual assistant for us to be able to handle guest communication has been unbelievable.
That's incredible. I didn't even think of that as a use for AI, but that's great. And yeah, it sounds like you've had a pretty good response from
Yeah.
customers with
Yeah. Yeah.
that
It's
service.
it's actually it's actually we joke internally about it because there are people who are chatty, right? And they will have full on conversations with the AI about their brother-in-law and their job and it's unbelievable.
I believe it. I was watching a show recently where I think it was some worker at the job, and he was with like a customer service rep, which was AI. He thought the guy was his best friend.
Yep.
So, and then come to find out, he wasn't. He was an AI generated. But anyway, so just goes to show that the capabilities are endless, really,
Yeah.
with AI. So for those of you who didn't listen to a prior episode, we have an AI episode where we discuss in detail some of the AI capabilities that are out there. Very good. As far as services offered, can it be customized for each owner as far as maintenance, cleaning, bookings, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, as a company, we tend to try and rely on two different packages, we'll call it. And the first package is sort of where the owner still wants to retain involvement. And that is, we get their listings listed on all the booking channels. We set dynamic pricing for them. And then we activate our AI agents for the guest communication. That's kind of the like quick and easy for the owner. They can still do their own maintenance. They can still handle their own cleaning. They can be as involved as they want to be. And then we have a full turnkey package where we handle everything, top to bottom, cleaning, maintenance, all that stuff, in addition to reservation management, et cetera. But there's always room for customization. We have several owners that where, for example, they want to do the maintenance. They want to be involved with the sort of upkeep of the property. They want to retain a bit of involvement in the business. And I think, you can probably speak more to this, but I think that there is a tax benefit for a lot of owners that want to maintain material sort of participation in the business, right? And so I know that some people that's important for them. And, from our standpoint, we're happy to let people be as involved as they want. The only real requirement we have is that if we're going to be doing the sort of guest messaging part of it, that the owners don't get involved, because it can be really tricky when multiple people are trying to answer the same question and you've got different people answering different stuff. But yeah, we've got people that, like I said, we just do the basic stuff. So we get all the properties listed on all the channels. It really helps them kind of diversify where they're getting their reservations from, boost the money coming in through price labs. And then the AI just really helps kind of answer the repetitive questions for them. But yep, absolutely can customize stuff to whatever people want to do.
Great. Yeah, and you mentioned from some of the tax implications, things like that. I mean, definitely there is some value to materially participating in that activity, and also if you can qualify as a real estate professional on those owners. So there's a lot of tax benefit there, as well as owning the property, taking depreciation, things of that nature. And from a business model you speak on, I mean, it's for you all, the co-hosting seems like overhead is kind of minimal for you all as far as the operation. So pretty profitable business.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. I mean, it's the thing that I learned from the bike shop downshift was that it was very difficult to scale that business because it relied heavily on my own expertise as a mechanic and as a people person. It was like everybody that came in wanted to talk to me. As much as I enjoyed that and as much as my ego appreciated it, I needed a break, and there was no way to sort of grow that, right? It's like you're only one person. There's only 24 hours in the day. You can only do so much. Hosting side, the ability to scale this business is limitless, right? I mean, the software allows us to take new listings on as quickly as we can. And really the big thing for us is having cleaners and boots on the ground for maintenance. And like, as long as we can retain good relationships with our cleaners and our maintenance staff, like, yeah, I mean, you can grow this thing we don't need any offices. We don't need any warehouses. We don't need very little overhead and infrastructure involved in the business.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with that. So, and you've really built it up, and I'm sure you have big plans for the future as well, as far as growing in this business and continuing to add properties.
Yeah, we actually, if you got a second, I can tell you a little bit about our growth plans too.
Go right ahead. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, so we've got two kind of exciting things that we're leaning into now. So the first is called stayroanoke.com. So STAY Roanoke.com. That's going to be our marketing sort of company that we're launching. And so what the idea behind Stay Roanoke is that we're going to be able to bring other Airbnb hosts into the Stay Roanoke platform and build out our own OTA. So like, for example, we're going to take well-vetted, well-reviewed owners and say, hey, we're going to put your property on stayroanoke.com. And then we can use grants. Like, for example, we won a grant from the Virginia Tourism Company or Virginia Tourism Corporation to sort of market Stay Roanoke, regionally. And then we can get people to visit Stay Roanoke and book their stay on Stay Roanoke as opposed to using Airbnb. The big thing there is there's a huge fee savings for everybody, right? Airbnb takes 15.5%. So if we can direct traffic away from Airbnb to the greater Roanoke area, then it's a win for everybody, for owners and travelers. And then the next thing is rentinroanoke.com. So rentinroanoke.com is going to be basically whether you're staying short-term, mid-term, or long-term, you can find great listings at rentinroanoke.com. So that's kind of where we're heading.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. So it sounds like the Rent in Roanoke, that's kind of a catch-all for everything. The Stay Roanoke is more your traditional Airbnb short-term rentals, long weekend, a week or something like that. So, okay, cool. Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. It sounds like the fee structure is much more advantageous with Stay Roanoke than say your Airbnb or VRBO or something like that.
Yeah, and the cool angle for us too is like we want to support local business owners and people that are doing this. And like, the nut that we're trying to crack, which, maybe if the listener can help, it's really hard for us to be able to take because we have several like mom and pop, we'll call them Airbnb hosts, right? That are killing it. They're doing great. Like we love seeing these properties out there. They're sort of our competition, but not really. But like we would love to have them on Stay Roanoke, but they don't want a management company, right? They don't need a co-host to come and help them, but they want the advertising, right? They want the free marketing of, hey, Roanoke, cool. I want to, I want my guests to come from Stay Roanoke because maybe it's somebody that doesn't know about my listing and I'm buried in Airbnb and they can't find me. But that's the sort of logistical challenge we're fighting right now, is the ability to bring owners in that basically for free, or at least a discounted rate, so that they don't have to pay for co-hosting services or management, but can get their listings on this website where people who are wanting to come to Roanoke can see them and book through that site.
That's great. Well, I'm glad you have a plan for the future, and I'm sure it'll be successful. But I mean, it really is incredible the number of just relationships you've created. We were talking the other day, and I was talking about some people I knew in the area, like, oh, I work with them. I got a space on their property. So how have you been getting your name out for BNB SideKick? Been just
Yeah.
word of mouth, or how do people hear about you?
Yeah, it's all word of mouth. I mean, honestly, we don't market ourselves, and that's mostly because I am bad at marketing, and I know there are experts that do it. And I know you can spend a lot of money marketing, but we gained a huge network of people from the bike shop, right? And so people tell me literally I'm trying to remember where I was. I think I was in Martinsville, and like somebody just randomly was like, did you own Downshift? And I was like, yeah, how do you know that? And he was like, I was in Roanoke and I like stopped by. And I mean, it's crazy the amount of people you meet from owning a small retail business and people that come through the door, right? And so you make these relationships with people in the community, and then they hear what you're doing and they're like, hey, can we have a conversation? Can we talk? And that's been the bulk of our referrals, has been through people that we've networked with Downshift. And so we get, I would say, kind of the traditional referral occasionally too. So for example, we have, within my network, we have friends that manage properties in different areas. So like your more traditional property managers, and they'll get wind of somebody that needs a co-host. And so we'll have that funnel bring us a lead every now and then. But for the most part, it's people that know people. And that's what's so cool about Roanoke, is it's pretty small, right? And it's kind of tight knit, and you really can leverage those relationships and the people that you know and the people you go to the gym with and the people you see for coffee. Like, it's cool when people find out about what you're doing. It can really grow your business and not have to have a traditional marketing angle.
You really can. And it's genuine. I'm sure when you started the bike shop, that wasn't your goal to build this big network so you would have these resources when you opened BNB SideKick.
Right.
But it just goes to show this community. I mean, there's other communities like that as well, but just goes to show what just taking the time and getting to know some people can do for you.
Yeah,
In
totally.
the end. So awesome. As far as regulatory limitations or restrictions, are y'all dealing with any of that?
Yeah, a lot actually. And we could have a very long conversation about this. So
We'll have to have another episode for that.
I'm trying to think of how to like keep this short. So there are regulations regarding short-term rentals, and Roanoke City is actually one of the most heavily regulated areas in our region. And they were one of the first sort of entities to put these regulations in place. And a lot of people aren't familiar with those regulations. And we actually have a high number of illegal short-term rentals in Roanoke City. A lot of people don't know the rules. They buy a house, they think they can put it on Airbnb, and they do, but they're not in compliance with zoning and planning. And we've actually approached the mayor, zoning and planning offices. We've had meetings with them about the number of illegal short-term rentals, mostly because we stand behind our clients, and we see it as it's not fair, right? It's when you have owners that are in compliance and then the person across the street is not in compliance. We see that as an opportunity for the city to step in and enforce the zoning laws that are on the books. And so, we just want to see everybody play by the rules. But yeah, there's several rules, particularly around short-term rentals in Roanoke City, Roanoke County. A lot of it is related to specific zoning within, where your address is, right? It's your lot. So you got to check those rules and regulations. We have had owners who have crossed paths with county administration and gotten cease and desist letters. And so we've seen everything. We've seen, people get turned down for permits. We've seen people get banned by counties for doing this improperly. Yeah, you got to know your stuff.
Yeah, I'd love to have a longer conversation about that, either on another episode or offline.
Yep.
Because that's something I don't think I was even aware of, as far as the restrictions on short-term rentals as far as zoning. I mean, obviously, I deal with a lot of the tax implications and stuff like that, but that's interesting to hear. So yeah, thanks for sharing.
Yeah, and it's building code and building use too, right? So like, just and again, I don't want to get too in the weeds in this, but like if you think about it, let's say you've got a multifamily property and it's zoned, for Airbnb. So it's commercially zoned or downtown zoned or whatever. So the zoning will allow you to do Airbnb. But when you think about the building code, like if you've got a short-term rental for building code, now you're talking about like a hotel, right? So you need fire egress, you need fire suppression, you need all these things that a traditional residential building is not going to have. So there's a lot that has to be put into this to do it right.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you mentioning that. That's good to know. And I'm sure listeners out there, they probably weren't aware either. And that's something they may need to look into. They may own a short-term rental and be like, oh, wow, maybe I need to, maybe I need to look into this or have a conversation with someone. Anyways, that's wonderful. I guess I'll wrap it up with, do you have any tips or things that you would point out to people that are new to short-term rentals, new to co-hosting, things that they should do to help them be successful?
Yeah. Honestly, the biggest, I would say if you're new to it, or even if you're not new to it and you've been doing it for a while, do not underestimate the value of high quality photos. That is my number one tip. Hire a real estate photographer to come in and take photos of your property. That will do you so much benefit. I mean, we see it all the time. We see people that have great listings, beautiful listings, but they've used their iPhone, right? And the photos are crooked and the lighting is terrible. And it's like, when you think about it from a guest's perspective, right? The only thing you're going off of is the way it looks and the reviews of what people say about it. One of the only things you really have the most control over is the photos, right? The reviews, obviously, I mean, you would like to think they're organic and they're honest, right? So the reviews of the property should be reflective of the value of the property, but the photos are the one thing that you have control over. And time again, we bring in owners and the photos are just terrible. And it's like a night and day light switch when you bring in a photographer to come in and take new pictures. It's unbelievable, the difference.
Tip of the day, make sure you hire a photographer, professional photography. To come out and do your property. So yeah, that's great. I mean, and I would completely agree. I mean, when I'm looking for a property online, I mean, the pictures hold a lot of weight. So, I mean, if they're dim lighting or sideways, or I'm like, okay, well, this person didn't take the time to put good quality photos up. I mean, I can only imagine what the service is going to be or what the property actually looks like when you get there.
Yeah. And I think subconsciously too, it kind of, when you're viewing stuff, right, it's like, I think you don't even make a conscious decision. I think you just see it. And if it doesn't click in your head, you just swipe, right? And you're just on to the next one. And I think that's what people don't realize is that like you're shooting yourself in the foot with this stuff, because while you might think it looks good or it's good enough, it really isn't.
Yeah. And we're at a day and age where you can just swipe. And there's going to be there's plenty of properties available. It's very rare. I mean, there may be a couple locations in the middle of nowhere where you're kind of limited to your options, but for the most part, there's options out there. And if they're going to find something that clicks more in their head, that they like, that's more appealing. So cool. Well, I appreciate, we went over a lot of stuff today. I really, really appreciate it. It was enlightening to me. I'm sure a lot of listeners appreciated it as well. As a wrap up to this episode, I want to give you a chance to share. You share the website, obviously, for Stay Roanoke and rentinroanoke.com.
Yep.
Love to have you share your contact information as well as BNB SideKick.
Sure, yeah. You can always get in touch with us at BNBSideKick.com. My phone number should be on BNB Sidekick. We've got an 800 number. It's 855-782-9262. And then you can email me directly at steve@bnbsidekick.com.
Awesome, Steve. Well, I really appreciate it. Hope we can continue this relationship and hear some more about some of those regulatory restrictions that are going on.
Yeah, I'd love to do one on that, man. Seriously, like we could have an entire podcast on that.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely be in touch and talk through it. So anyways, that is a wrap for the March episode of the Real Estate Tax Playbook. I appreciate everyone tuning in. Make sure you are sharing this with your friends, colleagues, family. If you like what you hear, make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever else. We'd love to hear you continue to listen to us, and we'll be back next month with a new episode.
Thanks, Evan.
Thank you.